Yeah! Can't steal it! Woo! Wheel and deal it! The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better. I got 141 and 2/3 chance of winning. But brother, I am bad and they know I'm bad.
I'm the man of the hour, the man with the power. You speak to me, scholar.
It's showtime, folks!
Welcome to the Grill Out. From the heart of Shillian, West Virginia, here's your host, Hollywood Jeff Petty.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Grill Out, episode 48. I am your host, Hollywood Jeff Petty, and I am not joined by my two co-hosts, plural, both of them. They're not here for this weekend. I'm actually, it's a bit of a weird schedule this week. We still have no idea where Jason is. He's at an undisclosed location and will not relinquish the 10 ounces of plastic to Josh, who is actually the rightful champion of the Grill Out Predictions Heavyweight Championship. I know I just keep adding words to it. And also Josh, I went ahead and he took the weekend off. I'm actually, like I said, weird schedule. I will be the only one on the show for this week, but then next episode we should have all three of us in the studio together like you all want to. And just to jump right into it, NXT will be moving to the CW. Now, this is no surprise to the average wrestling fan. There's been a lot of TV deals going on. Starting October 1st, there will be a lot of changes to WWE programming with the CW with NXT going over to the CW. And then you have SmackDown coming over to USA Network. And actually, Raw will be going into the last few months of their deal with the USA Network before they go over to Netflix exclusively in January. So the first two events for NXT will be live, and not just live, they will be at another location that is not where they normally do their show. They're at the Performance Center, the Capitol Wrestling Complex, and all of that. For the October 1st show, they will be at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, and of course, they're going to have the one and only CM Punk on the show. And then October 8th, they will actually have Randy Orton there because they will be taking place from St. Louis. So it makes sense. That will be October 8th with Randy Orton, October 1st with CM Punk. October 1st will be in Chicago. October 8th will be in St. Louis. And actually, speaking of the one and only CM Punk, there's a lot of rumors right now going on between him and Drew McIntyre and where their feud will go next. According to Work Wrestling right now, CM Punk and Drew McIntyre will clash once again. They will face off inside a Hell in a Cell structure at Bad Blood on October 5th. And, of course, the show takes place from the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. Interesting fact about this, and I'm glad that WWE is doing this because it's kind of a callback to the first Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. October 5th, we've talked about this before on the show, actually is 27 years. It makes 27 years since the first Bad Blood pay-per-view, which was Bad Blood in Your House at that point with 2 Ds and not 1 D, what they had later on as they kept the Bad Blood pay-per-view going. Like I said, it will be 27 years since the first one. It will also be 27 years since the first Hell in a Cell took place. And like I said, that was between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. And rumor has it, it will be CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, which this is a little interesting because remember, I could be wrong on this. Okay, I could be wrong on this. I think CM Punk said something here recently that he didn't really want to do a match like that. He didn't really want to do a ladder match or anything of that nature, but the rumor is right now, like I said, it's coming from Worked Wrestling. They've gotten a lot of stuff right, and they are a rather trusted news source for professional wrestling, as we are too. We like to make sure that you know this. Like I said, it will be CM Punk and Drew McIntyre for the Bad Blood pay-per-view on October 5th. I still echo how much I did enjoy CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's match on at SummerSlam. I did see a video here recently with Seth Rollins from the little camera that he had, the ref cam. they were supposed to have more shots of the match through Seth Rollins' eyes through the ref camera that he had, but apparently the battery or something fell off. I think the battery died or something, and they just kind of scrapped it right there on the spot. But I did watch a video, and it's just kind of hilarious hearing some of the interactions that Seth was having with Drew and CM Punk in the ring. You know, the stuff that you don't normally hear, per se, while watching the actual broadcast. So I found it rather funny. I found it rather interesting, but I'm rather excited. If this is true, I'm going to be very excited for this, very invested, because I'm thoroughly enjoying Drew McIntyre's heel turn, his heel run against CM Punk. CM Punk coming back, to WWE and everything. The story there, it kind of writes itself, even though, there was some of the controversy in AEW, but we are all past that. Some of us are. I'll admit that. I'm past it. I know that there's others in the wrestling industry that may not be. But like I said on last week's show, Drew McIntyre, to me, the hatred he has in kayfabe terms towards CM Punk can power a small village. Like the level, my last name is Petty, okay, per se. I mean, you know this. I said this at the top of the show. I said what my name was as your host. I enjoy a little bit of pettiness. I enjoy a good dose of pettiness, and Drew McIntyre has that. So just to stick with WWE at the moment, Odyssey Jones joins the New Day. He debuted on Monday Night Raw, this past Monday Night Raw. Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods continued their rivalry with the Final Testament against the Authors of Pain after interference by Scarlett Bordeaux and Karrion Kross put Kingston and Woods at a disadvantage. Odyssey Jones, the former NXT star, came to even the playing field, marching to the ring in a New Day t-shirt. Jones took out Kross and fought off the AOP by simultaneously side suplexing the 600-pound duo. Big E, I love Big E, okay? I enjoy Big E very much. He did have something to say to this on X, quote, "The big man looked phenomenal. A star is born. Odyssey made a lot of new fans tonight. Hashtag WWE Raw," end quote. And then also in a digital exclusive for Raw, Woods talked about how no one in WWE has been able to break up the New Day. He discussed the group's upcoming 10th anniversary this November, but didn't mention Jones. Woods seemed lukewarm to Jones in the ring, even though Kingston was quite receptive to the 300-pound powerhouse. So we'll see if there is going to be friction between Woods and Kingston because of all this Odyssey Jones stuff. I had no idea that the 10th anniversary of the New Day was coming up. I had no idea of that. And I'm a little disappointed in myself that I didn't know that, because the New Day is, for me, they're one of my favorite groups in all of professional wrestling, just not just in WWE. I think they're phenomenal across the board. If anything, I don't want to compare them to the Freebirds because that seems like a bit cheap. But if we're talking about trios, we're talking about a trio group of people that, fans enjoy, even though the Freebirds were not, they were heels and all that against the Von Erichs. But just Impact, I would say the New Day is sort of I'm not even going to go there. I wouldn't say that they're the modern day Freebirds. I almost said that. I actually take that back. But I mean, you can't take away the influence that the New Day has had on WWE. Even when WWE was sort of in a slump, okay, the New Day was one of the acts to watch. They were one of the acts that kept the ship going, that kept it afloat. Of course, them, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, as much as some people don't want to admit that, Roman Reigns was also part of that, along with Charlotte Flair and pretty much all four horsewomen. But the New Day themselves are phenomenal. They're great. I mean, you can't go wrong with them. And like I said, it looks like that the 10th anniversary for them is coming up this November. Don't know if Odyssey Jones is going to be an official member by then. We'll see where this storyline takes us, but it is a fun thing to look forward to. Speaking of looking forward to, last last weekend, last Saturday, was WWE Summerslam, okay? Triple H was asked at the post-show press conference, because, they have a press conference after every show. Somebody asked him about this year's event, and he made sure, asked him about this event and if it's ever going to go to 2 nights like WrestleMania. He said, quote, "Who knows what the future brings? But I do think that even tonight, seeing this SummerSlam 7-match card that goes almost 4 hours to me, and yet there was a lot of stuff we could have put into this." And even some people saying, well, why wasn't that in there? Because it would have been 8 hours, right? And you still need stuff for Raw. You still need massive content for SmackDown. You still need all that stuff. As we continue to grow, we'll take it, like I said, step by step. So is this the last SummerSlam that you see that is one night? I think so. But we'll see where that goes long term. I'm excited about that opportunity, end quote. We've talked about on the show about the possibility of SummerSlam going to 2 nights. We've mentioned this before. I talked about it with Dave Weekley on Hotline here recently. He asked me about it, and I still echo the same sentiment that we have towards it as a collective group for the three of us on this show, that it would dilute the idea of having a 2-night pay-per-view. Maybe we'll see when we get there and see how it is, but I don't know exactly how I feel. Well, I do know exactly how I feel about it. I don't like it too much. If anything, I know it's a 4-hour show. I think SummerSlam, the main show itself, came out to 3.5 hours and some change. That was what was on Peacock. I feel as if it shouldn't. I feel as if we should not, we shouldn't go to a 2-night SummerSlam. Because if you go to a 2-night SummerSlam, then there's a possibility of going to a 2-night Survivor Series. That's a little bit of a stretch, but trust me on this. Then we'll probably go to a 2-night Money in the Bank, and maybe a 2-night Royal Rumble. Now, could it go that far? Maybe. I think so. I think it could. And that's just going to diminish it a little bit with WrestleMania. Because I think having WrestleMania night 1 and 2 is great. It gives everybody a chance to get on the card. It makes it feel special. It's not something that they do all the time. And maybe that's the case with the Big 5. I still don't like it too much. Maybe I'm just a little bit of an old crotchety man about it. But I don't think it is as good of an idea as people are thinking. We'll see. Money talks. I mean, that's for sure. I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to see. I could be proved wrong. I will say this about the 2-night WrestleMania, and I haven't said this on the show before, and this literally just popped in my head. WWE does 2-night events better than New Japan did. I know New Japan started doing 2-night events before the pandemic. They had Wrestle Kingdom, and even at one point stretched it to a 3rd night, which I felt like was just way too much. I was not a fan of the 2-night Wrestle Kingdoms. And maybe it's because I'm a North American fan, because you got to get up super early just to watch it. Okay? I am not... I wasn't a fan of it. Does WWE do a much better job with it? I think so. I think they do a much better job with a 2-night event, making it feel special, making it feel, one, it's WrestleMania, it's going to feel special anyway. But to add the 2 nights there, I think is a good thing. But we may see it be diluted a little bit if SummerSlam starts to get a 2-night event. If the Royal Rumble starts to get a 2-night event, Money in the Bank, Survivor Series. I don't see it going any further than the Big 5. But we'll see. We will see. And speaking of Japan, Japanese wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Kenny Omega, so, that's where he made his name. Well, I know he started in DDT and all that. It looks like there is a possibility of a Kenny Omega return. We don't have anything in stone. Now, this is coming from Dave Meltzer of Wrestling Observer newsletter. This quote comes from F4WOnline.com. Quote, "It looks like a Golden Lovers reunion will be happening in AEW when Kenny Omega is able to return. Both Kota Ibushi and Omega have been out of action due to injury issues. Ibushi underwent ankle surgery this January, while Omega had surgery done in May. Following a bout with diverticulitis, Omega has not wrestled since December 2023. So we're coming up on 1 whole year since Kenny Omega has been in the ring. And, yeah, Dave Meltzer discussed Ibushi's tweet. I guess Ibushi made a tweet talking about how AEW was his home because he did recently celebrate an anniversary within professional wrestling at GLEAT. There was an event at GLEAT that he partook in. But he was talking about how AEW is his home. And Dave Meltzer discussed that on Wrestling Observer Radio and noted that Omega's health is improving. Quote, "Basically, when Kenny Omega returns, Ibushi is returning," Meltzer said. He basically said he's under contract there and he's waiting for Omega to return for him to return. I don't know if there's even a date of when Omega will return, but he'll put it this way. I don't think it's so far away as before. Usually for a wrestler, it's about a 4-month recovery, and a lot of wrestlers push it and probably come back quicker, but that would be like mid-September. And what he's referring to is the surgery that Kenny Omega just recently had to fix the diverticulitis and everything that he was dealing with health-wise. And he says that it looks like it might be mid-September. Now, if it is mid-September, okay, I'm going to double check right now of what day is All Out. I know All In will be on August 25th. All In will be August 25th. All Out 2024 will be September 7th. So that's in Chicago. Well, it's at the Hoffman. It's in Chicago. At the Now Arena. That will be September 7th. All Out will be there. If what Meltzer is going by, and I know we're sort of taking it by gospel, if what Meltzer is saying about Kenny Omega returning, then that could be a week after All Out. Or what we could have is Kenny Omega possibly return at the end of All Out and sort of start setting up this feud that they're going to reignite between him and the Elite, because the Elite has turned heel. With the Bucks being the EVPs, Kazuchika Okada finally letting those comedy chops come out, and Okada is amazing anyway. He's a phenomenal wrestler, in my opinion. With, like I say about Swerve Strickland, top 10 in the world. Kazuchika Okada is another one, top 10 in the world for me. But with that return, we could see Kenny Omega. Now, this is not. Don't take this as fact. It's a rumor, okay? But we can speculate a little bit. The speculation is that Kenny Omega could possibly make a return mid-September, which then Kota Ibushi comes back. So they come together and reform the Golden Lovers. The Golden Lovers reunite and take on the Elite. So we could see that. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. I don't know for sure. But there is a possibility that we could see that. And speaking of Japanese wrestling, I have something special for you all in the upcoming segment. We're going to talk about one of my all-time, not current wrestlers, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers ever in the wrestling business, the one and only Bruiser Brody. Stay tuned.
For more of The Grill Out, here's Hollywood Jeff Petty.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to The Grill Out. I am your host, Hollywood Jeff Petty. If you would like to let us know what you think about the show, what you would like for us to cover, tell us what you like, what you don't like, you can email us thegrillout95@gmail.com, or you can go to the Facebook page. It is simply called The Grill Out over there. Just make sure you go like the Facebook page. We've had a lot of interactions over there. Some of the local promotions have gotten on there, showed their support. We very much try to make sure that you know what your next week of professional wrestling looks like, whether that be national, locally, or even internationally at times. And yeah, just make sure you go over there. We post things all the time. We let you know where things are going to be happening locally here within the Charleston area or just within West Virginia. And we also, post things on there. Like I said in the previous segment, I had a chance to talk to Dave Weekly on Hotline right before SummerSlam to sort of preview SummerSlam, so we were able to put that out there and also to give updates on the show and, interactions and all of that. So make sure you go to the Facebook page, like it. It is called just The Grill Out. That's all it is. Just type it in, The Grill Out. You'll see the little symbol there, the little, whatever. Can't think right now. But with that being said, I did say in the previous segment that we were going to talk about one of my favorite professional wrestlers. Okay. I know I talk about Kenny Omega on here a lot. Okay. And it's not him. It's not Kenny Omega. Okay. It's not Stone Cold Steve Austin. And it's not Eddie Guerrero. Those three right there are my top three professional wrestlers of all time. But from that point, from four down, it fluctuates. But one of the names that stays within my top 10 of all-time favorites, not just, not like I'm saying about Swerve Strickland or Kazuchika Okada, where I think that they are a top 10 talent in the world. I think that this person is, in my opinion, one of the top 10 greatest ever. Now, one of the people that, one of the styles that I don't want to say I'm not too fond of. I enjoy it, but I don't gush over it like certain people, is the big guys. Like, sometimes I'm not too big about the big guys, as you can see with my top three of all time, Stone Cold, Kenny Omega, and Kenny Omega and Eddie Guerrero, excuse me. But this guy, Bruiser Brody, is one of my favorite big men ever. Okay? And some of the stories around Bruiser Brody are just even more fascinating to me. And I'm not talking about what happened to him in Puerto Rico. Okay, that's been covered numerous times by podcasters, by wrestling journalists, by television shows. I mean, the Dark Side of the Ring, I think that was their very first episode ever in their series, which was the death of Bruiser Brody. But to me, Brody is more than just that story. Okay, and I wrote this a while back. I wrote this some years ago. But, so, just how it goes. Some called him King Kong, others referred to him as Bruiser. He had a reputation of being wild in and out of the ring, a man who was not willing to back down from anybody, even if they were the ones paying him. The Wild Man from Santa Fe, New Mexico, was considered one of the last true independent wrestlers at the time of his death. Around this time, Jim Crockett Promotions, the second biggest wrestling promotion behind the WWF, were a few months away from selling to Ted Turner. We were also a few years removed from McMahon buying up all of the top wrestlers he could and raiding the territories. Gone were the days a wrestler could go from territory to territory, promotion to promotion, and make big money to live off of. Almost everyone was going with one or the other in the States. Brody was one of the last few stars to work independently. Actually, one of the few wrestlers around that time to not work for Vinny K's WWF, but he did work for Vinny J's WWF, taking on Bruno Sammartino during his second and final run with the world title. Yeah, Brody never worked for Vinny K. He never worked for Vince McMahon, the Vince McMahon that we know, the one that's, with the WWF, WWE, all of that. He actually worked for Vince's dad, Vincent J. McMahon, while it was the WWF, like I said, taking on Bruno Sammartino. Now, just to give you some background, the man behind Bruiser Brody, Frank Goodish, had the background of an athlete in American football, and he majored in sports journalism. Goodish attended and played football for West Texas A&M, West Texas State at that time. Some say he ended up there because of his lack of discipline and rebellious nature he possessed growing up. This is where he met Stan Hansen for the first time, his future tag team partner. This is also around the time one of his future rivals, Terry Funk, also attended and played on the same team. Could you imagine just being back in those days and playing against West Texas State at the time, and you just look across and you see Bruiser Brody, Stan Hansen? I know it's not them, it's them in college, but you got them along with Terry Funk. I played football before, and I don't want to go against guys like that. I don't. All due respect, and may Terry Funk and Bruiser Brody rest in peace. But they had Dory Funk Jr., Funk's brother, already graduated and debuted in 1963 in professional wrestling. He also attended West Texas State. Goodish would eventually graduate and try his hand at pro football. That career did not pan out. He pursued a career in sports journalism, but grew tired of it. So while working as a journalist, he would begin his training with Fritz von Erich, the patriarch of the famous Von Erich family. He would wrestle for World Class at first, but eventually started working the territories in the early 70s. When in Midwestern territories, he would go by King Kong Brody to avoid confusion with Dick the Bruiser, with whom he also had a rivalry with. Now, this was as far as I could never fully confirm this, but it did seem that Bruiser Brody did have had respect for Dick the Bruiser. That's why he never wanted to go by Bruiser Brody. Then he wanted to go by King Kong Brody in the Midwestern territories. It was the rivalry thing, but I think there was also an air of respect towards Dick the Bruiser. Around this time, Brody would cross paths once again with fellow West Texas alumni Stan Hansen. According to Hansen himself, he pitched the idea of them being a tag team. Brody liked this idea, and they began tagging shortly thereafter. They would go on to tear through everyone from the States to Japan. He would go on to win numerous tag titles, most with Hansen. I've watched some Stan Hansen Bruiser Brody tag matches, and I will say this: I pity the fool, that came in, looked at the match card. Oh, I'm in a tag match tonight. Who am I going against? Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody. You knew when you looked up and you saw the match card and you saw that's who you're going against. You weren't going to walk correctly after the match. You were going to be rather sore. I don't want to say injured, but you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it. Stan Hansen has gone on to record of saying Brody and him were a more physical tag team than the Road Warriors, especially after their time in Japan. Honestly, they had difficulty trying to get booked in the States, everywhere except for Florida a few times. Go figure. So put that, they couldn't really get booked anywhere else besides Florida. They did get booked in the Florida territory from time to time, but a lot of their tag matches were in All Japan over in Japan. And if you're a fan of the Road Warriors, the Legion of Doom in WWE, they were a very physical team as well. I mean, the Doomsday Device, where Hawk has, somebody up on his shoulders and then Animal comes over and clotheslines him off, or vice versa. I think it was Animal, actually, but I digress. I don't want to get knocked off the shoulders of one of the Road Warriors. But I don't know. I would probably take that over a lariat from Stan Hansen. Okay, and by the way, if you don't know this, Stan Hansen, all due respect to him, and he said this in interviews, that he can't see very well without his glasses. He's sort of blind. It's a little hard for him to see what's going on in front of him. And he's just coming at you with a clothesline just to knock the taste out of your mouth. I mean, I wouldn't want to mess with them. Hansen and Brody had a memorable feud with the Funks, Dory and Terry, in All Japan. They would beat the living daylights out of each other and then some. Beaten, bruised, and bloody is how most Brody matches went. Yeah, if you get a chance, go on YouTube and watch Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody take on the Funk Brothers. it was, I mean, the crowd was electric, okay? The crowd was absolutely electric for this. But those were some of the most physical matches I've ever seen. And also, Terry Funk is amazing. He's great at selling. I remember there's one match that they had where Terry Funk, he's kind of busted open on the side of his head, and he's just screaming in agony. You know, if you've watched a Terry Funk match, you know what that voice sounds like when he is screaming in agony and getting, pulling at those heartstrings of the audience. Brody was well known for his brawling style and is credited as one of the greatest brawlers of all time. But he wasn't just about brawling. He knew how to wrestle. Just watch his matches with Ric Flair in St. Louis. He was also very agile for a big guy, incorporating a drop kick in his famous King Kong knee drop. Plenty of wrestlers said they would not work with Brody because he would, and I'm not going to say it, he would beat something out of them. His matches with Abdullah the Butcher were the stuff of legends. It's kind of crazy a little bit. But, if you get a chance, go watch. Yeah, I don't know. I'm saying this a little bit. Go watch Ric Flair. Go watch the Ric Flair matches with Brody in St. Louis. If you've seen Ric Flair matches, you know what I'm talking about, especially Ric Flair back in the 70s and 80s. I mean, Flair could go in the ring. I mean, he would do 60-minute Broadways, night in and night out. Okay, that was just who Ric Flair was. And then you got this big guy, Bruiser Brody, coming in and just doing it. Just staying up with him, which shouldn't be possible. But Brody, and Brody's not a small guy. He's not a small guy at all. Brody was doing hardcore wrestling matches long before they were cool. He would grab anything he could, anything from umbrellas to the piece of a table to taking his own boot off and molly-whopping jabronis. Other times, he would use the chain that he brought to the ring with him. Why did he bring a chain to the ring, you must ask? Was it because he occasionally would go as King Kong? No. Was it because he was like a caged animal? Nope. He would because fans are crazy. In those days, wrestling fans were so into it, wrestlers would have to fight to get to and from the ring. More so in certain territories, Brody decided he was not about that, so he started bringing a chain to the ring to swing around so fans would clear. If you go back and you watch, you get on the line and you look up, because I know certain people, they will make, Titantrons. I used to do this as a kid. I would take, wrestling clips and I would put them together, and that's kind of how I taught myself how to edit. And I would tailor it to a wrestler's theme. So if you go online, you look up Bruiser Brody Titantrons or Bruiser Brody theme song, which is Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, you will see what I'm talking about. Brody would literally come out. Fans would already start running, okay, because they knew what was about to happen. He would come out and he would start just slinging his chain around like it was nobody's business. Like it was just like he was trying to clear house at that point. And it's something that you don't see these days. I'll tell you that one right now. In 2024, you don't see that. But in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, you definitely saw stuff like that. And yes, fans were crazy during those times. There's a story of, I think it was Jimmy Hart. He did something. He was being carried out of the ring. He was thrown over the shoulders of somebody that he was managing, and he was being taken out of the ring. I think this was in Memphis, if memory serves me correct. I think it was the Memphis territory. So Jimmy Hart's going out, and he felt a pinch on his butt. And what happened? A fan shot a blow dart at him, and it hit him in his keister. Again, fans are crazy. They were crazy at those times. Actually, the fans in Puerto Rico especially were nuts. They would throw batteries at wrestlers. Sometimes, and I'm not trying to gross you out, but they would sometimes throw other, liquids. We'll say that. We'll just say, for the sake of it, just other liquids on wrestlers, because that's how much they were into it. That's how, because kayfabe wasn't dead. People still believe. They still thought it was, it was an actual contest. Now, of course, I don't like saying the word fake. I've said this before on the program. I hate the word fake. I hate calling professional wrestling fake because it's not fake. It is predetermined. We've said this before in the program. And those fans at that time did not realize that it was predetermined. So you would have to fight to get to the ring. I think Roddy Piper talked about, like, he would get attacked sometimes going back to the ring, going back to the dressing room, per se. Or going to the ring, he would get attacked. That was a common occurrence. And I guess Brody, like I said, Brody's he's not a small guy. He's not. So he would just bring that chain and he would just swing it around. But he did have a reputation. And he had a reputation as an unpredictable wild man. But that made him a legend in the States, but a god in Japan. That's how he was looked at by certain wrestlers. Certain fans, not wrestlers, but certain fans. Brody was and is so iconic in Japanese professional wrestling, they still make reference to him. Minoru Suzuki came out like Brody in All Japan. Literally, he had the entire getup, the Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Songs playing. He's swinging the chain around. This is in the 2000s. I think the 2010s, so I think it was maybe been 2015, 2016 was when Minoru Suzuki, who people call Murder Grandpa, came out too. Togi Makabe, who still does some things in New Japan. His whole thing is based around Bruiser Brody. So much so that when I first started watching New Japan, back when Kenny Omega and the Bucks and the Bullet Club were huge, and they still kind of are, but not to the level they once were. When it was Tanahashi and Okada, I was introduced to a whole new cast of professional wrestlers, and Togi Makabe was interesting to me because I already knew about Brody. But, like, at the bottom of the screen, it would say, we cannot play this song due to copyrights in your country. What it was, they were playing Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. Now, they had some generic rock music over it, but that's what they were playing because he takes influence from Bruiser Brody. But don't let that fool you. Brody was a very intelligent person. He knew the value of him as Bruiser Brody. Some people would say that he was not in the professional wrestling business, but he was in the Bruiser Brody business. I don't think that is entirely true. That is my opinion. There's cases of where Brody would not be cooperative with a certain promoter. Sometimes it depended on the promoter. Sometimes it depended on he did not like the match. Yes, there have been plenty of times Brody's uncooperative nature has led to him stinking up a card, but plenty of wrestlers from Bret Hart to the Road Warriors and beyond have said Brody's actions showed them how much power a performer could have. It's not so much these days, but back in the territory days, you had promoters that would not want to pay you. There's the old saying, you get a hot dog and a handshake. It's what you get for your troubles. Well, that wasn't good enough for Brody. One of the most famous examples of Brody not taking anybody's crap was his steel cage match with Lex Luger. Nobody really knows what that was over, not even Luger himself. Some say it was because Luger was too cocky and Brody didn't appreciate that. Others say it was because the promoter was stiffing Brody on pay, so he did it to embarrass him. Nobody knows for sure in this case, but one thing we do know is that Bruiser Brody, he wasn't a honey badger. He was just a straight up gator. And there's the famous Will Ferrell "Gator don't play no games" clip. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and Luger has no idea what that was over. There was a steel cage match between Luger and Brody, and fun fact, the referee in that match was Bill Alfonso, the guy who blew the whistle for Sabu and RVD and ECW. In that steel cage match, Brody just quit selling. And what I mean by selling, he's not, like, Luger hits him, and he's supposed to register like, oh, that's called selling. But he wasn't. He quit it. He quit selling and just stared at him. And knowing how Brody is, Luger said, I ain't doing it. I'm out. He climbs the cage and leaves. He's not doing it. He said, I'm good. He didn't put up with anything. Brody didn't. He just didn't. Most say this behavior is what led to Brody's unfortunate death. Like I said at the start of this, I'm not going to cover it much here because it's been covered so much anyway, from YouTube to Dark Side of the Ring, and right now, we're 20 and a half minutes in. We've covered so much of Bruiser Brody, so in this segment. So I'm not going to so much cover that, but real quick, just to summarize, Brody was working in the Puerto Rican territory, World Wrestling Council. It's run by Carlos Colon, who is the dad of Carlito. The booker, Jose Gonzalez, a.k.a. Invader No. 1, had a long and bitter hatred for Brody. For Brody, the feeling was mutual. According to some, they owed him a lot of money, the promotion, somewhere in the $20,000 range. Nevertheless, Gonzalez and Brody did not like each other. While talking business with each other one day, Gonzalez stabbed Brody twice. Now, the reason for this is murky. There's been people that have come out and said that, that it was planned. The reason for it, the reason why Jose Gonzalez was acquitted on this was it was cited as self-defense. Nobody was ever charged for the murder citing self-defense, as to what I said. There was a huge cover-up and a lot of corruption was at play, allegedly. To put it into perspective how impactful this was, a lot of wrestlers refused to work in Puerto Rico after that. The territory suffered immensely for it, and they are still in operation today, but not to the level they were once at. And also, like I said, during those days, kayfabe was real. It was, this wasn't a predetermined contest, what we're used to these days. It was a real thing. It just, so when they go and they say, hey, it was self-defense, that's what the courts say. That's what we have to go by. Other than that, it's a lot of allegations and it's some allegedlys. The court believed it because Brody had this, this unhinged character in the ring. He was the madman from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I mean, he had the crazy hair, the beard, the marks on his forehead, the chain, everything. If Bruiser Brody were not killed on that fateful July day in 1988, what would have happened? It's hard to tell, mainly due to his unpredictable nature. Because like I said, Brody was very unpredictable about things. In my opinion, Brody would not have been working the territories as much because the money would have dried up eventually. Like I said at the top of this segment, there were already some moving parts. Ted Turner was about to acquire Jim Crockett Promotions. Vince McMahon pretty much had who he needed at that point and at that time, WWF was in their golden age. You had Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, The Ultimate Warrior, etc., etc. So the money would have dried up. And at that point, I mean, Brody, he had went for a while. So I would say maybe in the early 90s, it would have dried up. But Jim Nord, the man behind the Berserker, claims that Brody was in talks with WWF to bring them in as a tag team before he passed. I don't know how true that is, so, take it how you want. I think Brody would have gone there if the money were right, but would not have stayed long, simply because that's Brody's MO. I don't think he would have wanted to stay in one spot for very long. Vince and him would not have worked well together. I think there would have been definitely some friction there. And he would have maybe signed with Crockett, but I could honestly see him going back to All Japan like Hansen and finishing his career there. Now, that also leads to another thing, because you eventually had and just to wrap everything up, you had, around that time, this split with Pro Wrestling Noah. And when Mitsuharu Misawa took, pretty much everybody but Stan Hansen with him to form Pro Wrestling Noah from All Japan, Hansen stayed behind as as loyalty to Giant Baba. I think that Brody would have stayed with Hansen. He would have stayed there in All Japan. I don't think he would have went. I think he would have went to All Japan, and once that, that split with Pro Wrestling Noah happened, Hansen and Brody would have both been standing there. Alas, Brody is easily one of the greats of professional wrestling. Yes, he was a tough businessman, but he was smart and knew he could draw money. Yes, he didn't like promoters and was difficult on them. Apparently, you can thank Bill Watts for that one, allegedly. But when Bruiser Brody would come to town, it would sometimes save somebody's business because of the money they would draw. In my opinion, Brody wanted to make sure he was respected and make sure he received his cut of the pie he had rightfully earned. I don't blame Brody for standing his ground. That's what any respectable human being would do. That's my opinion, and yeah. But that's it on Bruiser Brody, ladies and gentlemen. He was a man who did not take lightly the disrespect, and he would take matters into his own hands. He walked to the beat of his own drum, and that drum was followed by Zeppelin's Immigrant Song. I wanted to thank all of you for, sticking this long on the segment. Up next, we have On This Day in Wrestling History and the main event. Stay tuned.
Once again, here's Hollywood Jeff Petty.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Grill Outs. I am your host, Hollywood Jeff Petty. I hope you all enjoyed what all I had to say about Bruiser Brody. And like I said in the segment, Bruiser Brody is one of my all-time favorites, one of my all-time favorite professional wrestlers. I enjoy, like I said, I think the stories around Brody are fascinating. I think that, unfortunately, his passing overshadows a lot of his accomplishments. And one thing I forgot to mention was, the original Triple Crown that All Japan has. Brody was a part of the process of that with Jumbo Sodata, taking I think it was the PWF heavyweight title off of Brody at the time, and eventually getting the other two to create the Triple Crown. So Brody had a hand in that. I do. I think his legacy is overshadowed a lot by his unfortunate passing, and I think that's. I don't agree with that. I think we should know more about Brody and understand that the man wasn't perfect. He wasn't, but he, I will always have respect for somebody that stands up for themselves. I always will, and that opinion will never change. So, on this day in wrestling history. August 11th, 1997, on Raw, Shawn Michaels returned to in-ring action against Mankind and revealed his new insurance policy to be the returning Ravishing Rick Rude. Also on the show, the Nation of Domination revealed Rocky Maivia as its newest member. Before that, you had Rocky Maivia, who was, this white meat babyface. He comes over to the Nation of Domination, and eventually, pretty much within the year, well, actually, within the next 6 months, he takes over as the leader. Farouk is out. We have The Rock. So this was, The Rock first joining the Nation of Domination in 1997, this in August 11th year, that many years ago. August 11th, 2003, Raw co-general manager Eric Bischoff is forced to face the recently unmasked Kane one-on-one as Goldberg takes on the Nature Boy Ric Flair in the main event. I remember that specifically as a small child. The not this episode in particular, the episode before that with Kane being unmasked, it terrified me. absolutely terrified me as a child. I mean, I was already terrified of The Undertaker. Like, I hated the way his music opened with the gong, and I would just take off, just running. After this, I got the same way with Kane. Sorry, Glenn. Sorry. August 11th. I don't know why I want to keep saying October. August 11th, 2019. Bray Wyatt's new alter ego, The Fiend, makes its in-ring debut at SummerSlam against Finn Balor. And Seth Rollins regained the Universal Championship from Brock Lesnar. The Fiend was probably, in my opinion, is probably Bray's greatest asset, greatest thing he invented. I think it was, it's terrifying. That's what Bray was about. 2019, 5 years ago, The Fiend went ahead and made its debut. Moving on to the main event, where we go ahead and we let you know what your next week of professional wrestling looks like nationally and sometimes internationally. For national, it's pretty much your regularly scheduled programming, but Raw and NXT are back on USA Network this week. The Olympics are over. Raw and NXT are back. They will not be on the Sci-Fi Network like they have been the past couple of weeks. So, they will be back to where they rightfully should be. Locally, we don't have too much going on this upcoming week, but, we like to go ahead and let you know where everything is happening. On Saturday, August 17th, All-Star Wrestling presents Summer Heat at the Madison Civic Center in Madison, West Virginia. Meet and greet is at 5 o'clock, and the bell time is at 7 o'clock. Reserved seating is $20, while general admission is $15. This event will feature special guest celebrity David Faustino, who played Bud Bundy on the Fox sitcom Married with Children. Also, WWE Hall of Famer Medusa, also known as Alundra Blaze, will be at the event. Not only will both appear, but they will both be involved in a match. David Faustino will serve as the special guest referee for the ASW Ladies Championship match, in which Medusa will be accompanying reigning Ladies Champion Micah, who will defend the title against Savannah Evans. Also for Saturday, August 17th, Atlantic Terror Championship Wrestling presents Warpath at the Leetown Community Center in Kernersville, West Virginia. Carneysville. I think it's Carneysville. Bell time is at 7 o'clock. Front row is $15 and general admission is $12. For Sunday, August 18th, Premier Wrestling League Mid-Atlantic will end the summer with a bang with the End of Summer Bash located at the Green Valley Skating Rink in Bluefield, West Virginia. Bell time is 6 o'clock. Front row is $12 and general admission is $10. And that is your entire week of professional wrestling, your week ahead, on television and local. Go out and support these local promotions. Go out and support, independent wrestling. They're great shows. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, go support them. You always hear people say, support those mom and pop shops. Well, support professional wrestling. Support these local wrestling promotions. I know, a lot of people, they want to see WWE or they want to see AEW or, a national promotion. Who cares? Who cares? Professional wrestling is professional wrestling, and the men and women who are in these rings, no matter what it is, no matter if it's on WWE, AEW, or ASW, Pro Wrestling Conquest, Premier Wrestling League, Mid-Atlantic, etc., many different wrestling promotions. They bust their butts. They do. And, some of my favorite moments as a professional wrestling fan have been at independent local shows, and just go support them. Just go support them. They're inexpensive. I know no money is tight. Everybody realizes that money is tight, but definitely go and support them. Go like the Facebook page. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Facebook.com/The Grill Out. It is just simply The Grill Out, or you can search it on your Facebook page. If you want to, if you have a comment on anything that we do here on the show, you want to tell me that I suck sometimes with these reads, because I do. I get tongue-tied. I try not to. I very much try not to. But sometimes I do. I get a little tongue-tied. You want to tell us what we're doing good, what you enjoy, what you don't like, what you would like for us to cover. Email us, thegrillout95, all lowercase, at gmail.com. And until next time, fellow wrestling fans, have a good one.
And good night. Bang.